Okay, so let me just do that and just
Dispel the bad energy.
Yeah, is that what we're doing now? Dispel the bad energy.
Why not?
From the new studio. What do you think of my new studio here, Dean?
It's reminds me a lot of the old studio. Same equipment
Yes,
and same nefarious characters using the equipment.
absolutely.
Enough said. You just want to show off the fact that you have a new studio.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly.
But you don't have the
new.
guts to get the camera and take the audience around.
No,
the new
no,
studio.
that's not going to happen.
See,
That's
there
not
you
going to
go.
happen.
And that's
It's not going to happen. Any thoughts on the name of the show? It's been
Just
a while
remind me again, what was the show called?
Romaic Ruminations.
Romaic Ruminations. Well, we're in a new room. So that's in keeping with the show. And in terms of Romaic, well, okay, Prozac. It's been a long time. I've been depressed without my audience, which is comprised of my pet cat. And yeah, I'm very enthused, as you can tell from my unraised eyebrow.
Well, I've missed making them.
Well,
So and
at least that's one of us, because you know how to make the magic happen. I don't. I just talk.
Well, I know how
Well,
to. I know
it's
how to
called
stick.
talking.
I know how to stick a couple of cameras together and then ask, you a whole bunch of questions. That's basically it.
Well, it's
I've
good
got
enough for
the
me.
easy job. You have to do
Okay.
all the research and gathering of all knowledge, right?
Is that what you think I do? Oh, you're so hilarious, Pete.
So it's been a while.
Has.
We're in 2025, and we've got a couple of topics.
Is that the year?
That is the year.
Oh my God, who's the president?
Of what?
Yeah, well, that's true. Great answer. I'll leave you to that because it's just good.
Oh man. Okay, so I thought what we'll do is we'll start off with something light, like we usually do.
Something light.
Something
Okay.
light.
It's obviously not my diet. Can you tell I've been on the diet?
You've lost weight.
It's called the pasturma diet. I've been eating pasturma every day for a week. Mes enfants, pasturma is nature's contraceptive. Your partner won't want to go near you if you eat pasturma every day for a week. Trust me, it works.
Man, what's it made of, Dean?
Pas and turma.
Of course.
Well, pasturma is interesting, Pete, because it's a very important foodstuff in Armenian cuisine, in Greek cuisine, in
Right.
Turkish cuisine. People
Yeah.
think pasturma, from which pastrami comes, because it went to Romania. They call it pastrami. Romanian Jews took it throughout Eastern Europe, and it's a mainstay, as you know, having been to New York, of Jewish cuisine. You know your famous pastrami on rye at Katz's Deli. But pasturma is from the Greek paston.
Really?
Yeah. Byzantine way of preserving meat. And
Wow.
the best is camel meat, camel pasturma, and you can even get it in Athens.
You speak from
Yeah.
experience.
I do. I love pasturma. I'm obsessed with it.
But camel version.
The camel version is really
Okay.
good. Yeah. Camel, the other white meat.
So as always, you've got a couple of interesting topics you've posted online here and there.
So you say?
I've perused your
peruse.
many articles. There is one that came up,
Okay.
and it was to do with the Despot of Morea, Thomas Palaiologos.
Yes.
Okay. Now you're saying that it served as a model for the statue of Saint Paul in front of Saint Peter's Basilica.
I'm really, really happy that you've jumped on the bandwagon of the
New Pope.
non-gender specific revolution, and you referred to Thomas as it rather than he/she. Now, I don't know how he identified himself gender-wise because I wasn't there, mes enfants. None of us were.
That was my intent.
But
100%.
But Thomas was the, not the tank engine, Thomas was the brother of the last emperor, Constantinos Palaiologos.
Right.
Last emperor of Byzantium. He was the despot of Morea. Despot means the autocratic ruler. So now we use the word despotis to mean a bishop, but the proper word for bishop is episkopos, which means supervisor, like your friendly supervisor at work.
Right.
Episkopos, he who goes around the periphery and watches, which is basically what supervisors do, going to become illegal to record people with cameras, so that in Victoria, so that part is in the workplace, especially in toilets and things like that. But the Episcopal didn't do that. But despotis, and then in the female Despina, which you call Panagia, mistress. It means master. He was the despot of Morea. We know that after 1204, when the pernicious Franks came to Constantinople for a crusade, which was instigated by the Pope and his minions and pomps to take over the Orthodox world. And they sacked Constantinople. Then they divided the empire into fiefdoms. And then we had the Latins for about 200 years in various parts of Greece. We know that the Byzantines went to Pontus and then formed the Empire of Trapezunda. So that was one branch of the royal family. The Komnenians went there. Another one went to Epirus and founded the Despotate of Epirus. And the despot of Epirus was like a king.
Yeah.
And then in Morea, in Peloponneso, we had the Despotate of Morea, which was the Paleologos family. And they they had to recapture half of it from the Franks.
Right.
And you have the Chronicle of Morea, which is written by Villahadouin, who was a crusader, about the Franks living there, fighting with the Byzantines, allying with them.
Right.
He was the last despot, and he fought the Turks. He did deals with the Turks. There was a deal whereby the Sultan said, if you recognize my suzerainty, I'll let you remain as the despot of Morea. Thomas, in the end, gave up and ran away to Italy. And in Italy is where he was considered to be a very impressive figure. And yes, the statue of St. Paul in the Vatican, outside St. Peter's Basilica, he served as the model for that because he was tall, dark, and handsome in that order.
Right.
And you see a lot of portrayals of Byzantine emperors, Byzantines in Renaissance art.
Really?
Michael and John Paleologos feature in various Renaissance paintings. I think Michael Paleologos was in Benozzo Gozzoli's painting The Adoration of the Magi. So that's the penultimate emperor.
Right.
They were exotic. They were from the East. They were a source of fascination. So, yeah, he was the poster boy, if you like, of the period.
So basically, if you go and see this statue, it's pretty much you're looking at
a nice version of him.
A nice version of him, right?
Well, obviously, because they idealised, they may have, lifted the pecs, emphasised a few of the other muscles more than what was natural. But, yeah, interesting.
So you talked about him being a despot of Morea. Now that's the Peloponnese.
Not the mines of Morea in Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. Yeah, that's something completely different. This is Morea, Peloponnesos. We're not sure where the word Morea comes from.
We're not?
Some people say Morea, which is I've just had a mental blank. What are those things called?
Peloponnesians.
No. They're not things. They're people. It's a kind of berry, but I can't remember what it's called now. Mura.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of berry, but I can't remember what it's called in English now. Mental block. Or from more, which is the Slavic word for sea, because what we know is in the 7th century, there was a mass influx of Slavs into the Balkan Peninsula,
right,
and a lot of them ended up in Peloponneso.
Right.
So many settled there, in fact, although they reckon now it might be an exaggeration. But the emperor had to send people to Christianize these people because they say that the Peloponnese had turned pagan again. My argument is that they were never Christian in the first place because of the άνθρωποι δεν έχουν το Θεό τους, only joking, Ivarate. My brother-in-law's a Peloponnesian. He's a really nice person when he's asleep. But, yeah, so it's either from More, which means sea, because the Slavs came down, they saw the sea everywhere, and they said, wow, this is great, this is the land of the sea, or some type of berry whose name I can't remember. It'll come to me.
What sort of powers did Paleologos have in that area as a despot?
Okay, so he was autonomous, so he was supposed to recognize the suzerainty of the emperor in Constantinople.
Right.
And at that time, the empire of Constantinople was Constantinople.
Right.
A little bit outside the walls of Constantinople.
Right.
A couple of islands. For a while, Thessaloniki, not in Thomas's time, that had fallen to the Turks. And Morea, that was it. That's all that was left.
Right.
Because the Turks had eaten away the Asia Minor, part of the empire, the Franks, the Serbs, various Albanian principalities. Yeah. There was not much left by the time that Thomas was there.
And we're talking about now 1460s?
1450s and
60s,
60s.
So 1453,
Constantinople falls. He hangs on for a bit, I think for another 10 years, and then they're gone. Yeah.
Then he ends up,
having to leave, and it's taken over by the Turks. It's a sad story, but It's, I think, the bit where the light is blinking out for that period. You know, it's the darkness is descending. It's like in the Star Wars films, you know, where the Senate has lost its powers, and Senator Palpatine is coming, and it's all turning to darkness, and no one is strong in the Force anymore. That's kind of what it was like. It was almost like the lights of civilization blinking out. People like George Gemistos Plithon, who was a neo-paganist who lived in Sparta, writes about this. He died just before the fall, so he never got to see the fall.
Right.
But it was a very, very traumatic experience for the people at the time.
Right. I mean, for a good might be pushing the historical aspect era a bit, but the Ottoman Empire ends up increasing in dominance and power post 1453. Right? Don't they actually within 100 years aren't they at the footsteps of Vienna and Austria?
They are. Yeah. So they go that far. They conquer North Africa.
Yeah.
And they go east to Iran, and they remain like that, relatively stable as a power, right up until the 18th century, and then the decline begins in the 19th century, when then they're referred to as the sick man of Europe.
That's right. They never really industrialized the rest of Europe did, right?
Well, when you say the rest of Europe, maybe Northern Europe, but definitely not Southern Europe, which didn't industrialize until a lot later.
Right.
But yeah.
Interesting. So we should actually, we've got Paleologos, who's this, was the model for this particular statue in the Vatican, and you're saying that other Renaissance paintings, statues.
Yeah, absolutely. We can talk about them some other time. Benozzo Gozzoli's done the Adoration of the Magi. It shows the Medici family in procession, and one of the retainers is a Paleologos. Also, there's another painting which is a painting of the Nativity, and one of the kings is a Paleologos.
Right.
Because we remember that at the time, just before the fall, or a few years before the fall, the emperor went to Florence in order to talk about the unification of the churches.
When was this?
This was in the, I can't remember exactly, there were two of them. There was one in the 1200s, one in the 1400s. Right. They went to Constantinople. Yeah. Sorry, they went from Constantinople to Rome and Florence, the Council of Florence-Ferrara, to reunify the churches. And they did sign an agreement that the churches will be reunified.
Right.
The Emperor John Paleologos went to England, and he was a guest of Henry
VIII?
the Seventh.
The Seventh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he went to Paris, and that was basically asking for money. It was like a begging tour. And he didn't get much money, but they were exotic figures for their time.
Yeah.
And they brought with them their scholars who swept the courts of Europe off their feet with their learning and their sophistication. But the Western rulers also noticed that the jewels in his crown were actually glass, because they had pawned their jewels in order to raise money to buy armies and mercenaries to defend themselves against the raids by the Turks. And they felt sorry for them, and they hosted them, and they learnt from them, then sent them on their way with absolutely no help at all. Yeah.
Oh, standard approach when you go out asking for help, isn't it?
It's fantastic. It's like the United Nations of that time.
Well, we're sort of sitting in the realm of the Ottoman Empire now.
Okay, I thought we were sitting in your new studio, which we were so proud of. But I'm happy to imagine the studio in a harem in the Ottoman Empire. Yeah,
not that opulent, I'm afraid.
And the only way that we would get in a harem in the Ottoman Empire was if we were eunuchs.
Not a sacrifice I'm willing to make, I'm afraid.
I don't think that it was you who'd be called on to make the sacrifice. Others would make the decision for you, but that's, yeah.
Ottoman Empire, as you very well know, we now coming up to the commemoration date for the Greek Genocide, 19th of May.
Also, 29th of May, fall of Constantinople. Everything happens in May. Constantinople was founded on the 13th of May.
Wow.
So there you go.
There you go. You've got a talk coming up, and
well, by the time this goes to air, the talk will have long passed.
Maybe, unless I can get it out beforehand.
You won't.
Probably not. Now, your discussion now is, well, your talk's going to be on Ottoman officers.
No, absolutely not. That's a vicious lie. I don't know who's propagating it. My talk, mes enfants, is going to be about Judgment Day. Cue the Terminator music here. It's fantastic to be here to talk to you about my new talk, which is called Hasta la Vista, baby. The time that edit this bit out. That's horrible. I can't do the accent.
You're doing it at your talk. You are going to be doing a
no, because I can't do
accent,
it. I have
right?
just no.
Come
but
on,
the
you
whole
have to
idea
arrive.
here is that after this First World War was finished, there were actually attempts to hold the Ottoman Empire, take them into account for what they did in terms of the massacres of the Christian population.
Right.
So there's this idea that they escaped unpunished, that there's never been any attempt to punish the perpetrators, that they should have gone to trial. Well, they did. They did go to trial. This is something that not many people, especially not many Greeks, know.
This is like this is the
1919.
and this is like the version of the Nuremberg trials, right?
Well, yeah, it was the precursor of the Nuremberg trials. And actually, when they were doing the Nuremberg trials, one of the things that they looked at was these court martials of people who were considered to have acted in a very barbaric and vicious manner towards these defenseless people. Yeah. Remembering, of course, a few interesting things. One, there was no crime of genocide.
No.
Yeah?
No,
there was no international court.
Right, yeah.
So, and these are interesting things. How do you define a crime? Who gets to define a crime? And then that takes you to the realm of victor's justice. You know, who imposes justice? So the Ottoman Empire was on its knees. It lost the war, the First World War, and the Allies said to the Sultan, look, we identify A, B, C, D, E, F, G people who've been really nasty, and I'm sure that you can find some more for us. We want to hold these people to account. Now, what's interesting is, apart from the fact that the trial took place, and one thing that I'll be talking about is how it was received within Turkey, this trial, how many people were really happy. Ordinary Turks and Turkish officials were actually happy for this to go ahead. A lot of them felt ashamed of what had happened.
Right.
And that's maybe where you're getting the idea that I'm going to talk about Ottoman officers, because I will. I'm actually going to talk about Ottoman officers' testimony who either witnessed the genocide, tried to stop the genocide,
right,
or gave testimony against other Ottomans who were actively involved in it. And there's one in particular who was saying things like, this gentleman was saying, look, I'm a doctor and my job is to battle microbes. And what were the Christians? They were microbes. I had to get rid of them.
Wow.
Things like that. And there were Ottoman soldiers or Ottoman officials who tried to stop this from happening, tried to defend the Christians, tried to hide the Christians, delayed in acting out on the orders. Now, all this is interesting, and there were debates within Ottoman Parliament about it, and you had Turkish people defending the policy, saying, well, look, that's what we did. And so what? Why are you now currying favour with the Allies? You had, interestingly enough, Armenian and Greek politicians within the Ottoman Parliament at the time accusing the government of these crimes, which is really interesting. But then it's
so there's a
1919.
politician who did not get killed during the genocide.
No, because remember that Constantinople, people who lived in Constantinople were not removed and were not killed. The only people in Constantinople that a large fuss was made about were there were intellectuals who were rounded up from the Armenian community who were killed.
That was in 1915, right?
Yep, that's what, when they celebrate's the wrong word, the 24th of April, that's what they're remembering. They're remembering how they rounded up all their leaders and intellectuals from Constantinople and led them away. That didn't happen to us. Ours was more complex. It was over in different areas, different times, from the 1900s right up until the end. In the end, none of those people that were tried, even if they were convicted, they were not imprisoned, they were not punished, because what happens is Kemal Atatürk has created his own rival Turkish government. One of the reasons why his government gains legitimacy is because one of his arguments is, well, look at this Ottoman government, which is completely morally bankrupt, has completely pandered and caved to the Allies. I am the one who represents the interests of Turkey, not them. They're traitors. He wins the war. He takes over the discredited Ottoman government, and a lot of those people who played active role in the genocide become very important members of his government, of his cabinet, so on and so forth. And that's when the whole thing gets hushed up.
Right.
Had that not happened, those people would have been tried and punished.
Wow.
So it's a really interesting thing, and it's a precedent because we have those testimonies. Some of those trials took place in Constantinople, others took place on Malta. We have the testimonies, and those testimonies are some of the only evidence we have about what happened, because we remember that there was a systematic purging of the Turkish archives in the 1970s. And a lot of the a lot of the documentation about the genocide was lost.
Really?
So these are really, really valuable testimonies.
And what's this argument that I also hear about is it the Treaty of Lausanne that talks about how Greece will not prosecute genocide or would not actually...
No, what happens with Lausanne is that, and that's where we're different from the Armenians and the Assyrians. The Assyrians didn't have a country, still don't have a country.
Mm-hmm.
The Armenians were given a country in the aftermath of all this, but within the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Greece was an existing country.
Yes.
So the whole idea is that there's the population exchange.
Mm-hmm.
We lose the war.
Mm-hmm.
We lose territory.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, okay, you're going to swap. You're going to have a population exchange, and then we're going to call it quits.
Mm.
That's it. Now, you can say that the Treaty of Lausanne hasn't been adhered to, and it's been broken because, well, one of the things was that Greeks could live in Constantinople unmolested. They haven't been.
No, especially...
Where there were hundreds of thousands in the 1920s, now you're lucky if you'll find 2,000 there.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The Turks will tell you that we've broken the Treaty of Lausanne because one of the articles says that the islands have to be demilitarized.
Right.
But we have demilitarized. There you go. But we have armies and we have soldiers on the islands for good reason.
Mm.
So there's give and take on both sides. But generally, the idea is there was a war, you lost, we call it quits. And we see that Greece, the Greek government per se, recognises the genocide. Well, they recognise the genocide is triplun. They recognise 3 genocides, which makes no sense and is historically incorrect. Thrace in April.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the Pontian genocide in May. And then there's the Holocaust of Smyrna and Asia Minor in September.
Yeah.
Now, our argument is that this is silly and this is wrong because it's a Greek genocide.
Correct.
All these people are Greek.
Yes.
There was no separate targeting of each group.
No.
They were Greeks. They were Christians. They had to go.
Yeah.
So why you would go and separate it into geographical regions makes no sense to me.
That's right.
Or to the logical populace,
Agreed.
unless you view it from the point of view of in Greece. Greece is a very regional place.
It is.
It's a tribal place.
It is.
We are a collection of disparate tribes, and the only thing in common we have is that we agree that we are descendants of Alexander the Great, Pericles and Kolokotroni.
Absolutely.
And we need to feel important, so we compartmentalize it. We all have, and we perpetuate this here in Australia.
We do.
Okay. Although sometimes, Pete, I think, well, okay, let's look at Melbourne. And we are currently, when we're not in the Ottoman Empire, let's look at Melbourne. In Melbourne, at the forefront of pushing genocide recognition, commemorating genocide, are the Pondians. God bless them. They do a job.
We do, yes.
And nobody else does.
No.
Yeah. The Thracians don't. People who come from Asia Minor don't. It's them. So if they call it a Pondian genocide and emphasize the Pondian aspect of the genocide, yes, technically I have the reservations I just expressed, but I understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
No one else is talking about it.
True.
So for me, it's logical, if regrettable, that the bigger picture is not focused upon.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's I think it's a major issue. But I think we should still be pushing for the bigger picture.
But
regardless.
the point I was trying to make, and I do have a point, ladies and gentlemen, because I raised my hand.
We're going to get there.
Yeah,
We're gonna
is this
get there.
the Greek government recognises the genocide,
Yeah.
but takes no steps, diplomatic or otherwise,
believe-
to cause Turkey
Yeah. Agree.
to recognise what's happened. They don't.
There is an argument that says the Greek government does not recognise the genocide. They have a day of remembrance allocated for it.
Okay, well, if you allocate a day to remember something, you recognise that it happened.
This is what I mean. I don't know enough legally.
How
to
do
determine.
you... I don't know. How do you...
I don't know.
No. If You recognise something if you commemorate it on a certain day. Because how do you commemorate it and not recognise it?
Okay, yeah.
So recently there was legislation passed to recognise the Day of Thrace, and I am as Thracist as they come, ladies and gentlemen. I am a rampant Thracist. And I say this, I actually was not happy with the legislation because it says, we're going to commemorate Thrace. And we're going to, it's actually in the legislation, various interest groups who come from Thrace and are Thrace-based will be able to commemorate this day and have lectures and dance groups about what's going on. But the legislation does not define what it is you're actually commemorating. Coincidentally, the commemoration falls on the day that we commemorate the genocide of the Greeks in Thrace. So they've recognised the day, but they don't talk about what it is in the legislation. It's just Thrace Day.
Really?
I have not seen a more Thracist bit of legislation in all my years, Pete. And I find that bizarre, but it's the Greek government. Let's commemorate a day but not define what that day is. It goes extensively, the legislation, in terms of who can commemorate it, how it's going to be commemorated, what kind of people can be invited to commemorations, but does not define what you're commemorating. That, for me, is the ape. Like, whoever drafted that piece of legislation, can I have a job? Because,
I think they knew what they were doing.
You think that Greeks in government knew what they were doing?
I think they do.
What Ottoman planet is this studio currently in, Pete?
Avoiding responsibility, I think that they're actually great at it.
So, and I mean, that has implications in terms of what we do here in Australia, as some of the viewers may not know, and they probably don't because they don't watch the podcast, is that we do a lot of work trying to get the genocide recognised within Australia, state, federal level. How do you do that when you have a Greek government that is afraid to call something by its name? The answer is with greater ease, because when they're not sticking their fingers in pies, we get better jobs done. There are outcomes.
This is so true.
Yeah. We meet our KPIs, mes enfants. In Greece, they don't have KPIs.
Yeah, this is so true. I get so often.
Kappa piyota.
I get so often get told, why doesn't the Greek government help? Why doesn't the Greek consulate help? And I'm like,
they're doing us a favour by not helping.
Do you really want their help?
Shout out to the Greek ambassador. Yep.
Yeah.
G'day, mate.
He's all right, Mr. Venizelos. He's actually
No, I was talking about the one in India. You have to names drop, don't you? Because you're on first name basis with the ambassador in Canberra. I don't know the gentleman. I know the one in India, though.
It's quite okay.
The ambassador in Kurdistan is a lovely fella.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he used to be here in Sydney.
Kurdistan?
Nice guy. Yeah.
Kurdistan?
Kurdistan, yeah. Autonomous region of Iraq. Greece got a separate ambassador there, yeah.
Serious?
Yeah.
Interesting. I had no idea that.
Absolutely.
I had no idea we had that. We're everywhere, aren't we?
We are like a virus. We're like a pandemic.
And don't you just love how we also like to claim people who might be of Greek origin?
Yes. So when I was young, and this is me showing my age, Dennis Lilly, the great cricketer.
Right.
So everyone would tell me that he's Greek.
Yeah.
Dionysius Lilis. Yeah. Daryl Summers. This one I could never find it. Daryl Summers is Greek. How? His real name is Paraskeva. How? I don't know. I'm not even going to go there. Yeah, no, there was a lot of that back in the day.
Yeah.
And you reckon that still persists?
Well, sometimes there is some legitimacy to it. I know people have talked about Napoleon having Greek origins, even though he was born in Corsica.
Well, that's based on something which you could conjecture that that's true, Pete, because there were people from Mani, who migrated to Corsica, and they were there for a long time, and that's why you have Greek churches on Mani. Right. You have various Maniots, and Maniots are unruly and difficult at the best of times.
Oh, this is very true.
And no, they were there for a while. Some of them even left Corsica and migrated to Algeria, and there was a village in Algeria which was populated by Greeks. So no, they were there. Without a doubt, they were there.
Yeah, and
you could see why people say, well, Bonaparte is or Kalogenis or something like that. That's what they say. Yeah. Something. But I don't know. I don't know how true that is.
And you also wrote...
Christopher Columbus is supposed to be Greek.
Him too.
A lot of people, yeah. Anyone who's, well, you know what? And the thing I love about the Greeks is anyone who's famous but is out of fashion, That's when we claim them. We claim them after they're out of
After
fashion.
they're out of fashion.
So Columbus now, colonialist, the harbinger of the destruction of the Incan Empire. And it wasn't his fault, but he brought everyone else. They followed in his wake. So not a really fashionable figure anymore.
No.
We claim him
Within
now that he's
certain
out of
circles,
fashion.
within certain circles.
Bonaparte the same. Bonaparte was a great tyrant, great dictator if you ask the Russians. The French love him, but nobody else does. Arch enemy of the English world. We're going to claim him now that he's not in fashion.
Speaking of Russians, apparently Zhukov is another one.
Okay, Marshal Zhukov's interesting. And Marshal Zhukov, of course, was the great general who...
one of the medals.
Massive medals. More medals than Archdiocesan Shindig. These people love their medals, but not as many as Brezhnev. Brezhnev had a lot of medals. That was after Khrushchev. But Zhukov was the Marshal of the Soviet Union. He was the one that pushed the Germans back and entered Berlin and received the acclamation of the crowd, and then they decided he was too popular, so they kind of sidelined him.
Yeah.
But because Stalin had died, it was a new era. They didn't kill him. Didn't get sent to the Gulag.
No.
But yes, there's been a lot of talk recently that Marshal Zhukov was Greek.
Where does this come from?
And apparently in the 1970s, in a magazine, Soviet magazine called Ogonyak, which it's a real magazine, his daughter, Maria, spoke about the fact that there was a legend within the family that he was of Greek origin. He was born in South Russia, where there was a large concentration of a Greek population.
Right.
He was an orphan, so he was brought up by a Russian family, but it was believed, it was spoken about that his original parents were Greek.
Wow.
So she mentioned this in the 1970s. He never spoke about it, or he may have spoken about it to his kids, but his daughter spoke about it. What we do know is that he was a student and proponent of a very important Soviet military strategist, Vladimir Triandafilov, who was Greek, who was a Pondian from the south. There is no doubt that that's the case. And in the 1930s, he wrote a book of strategy. He envisaged some type of invasion from the West, and he spoke about how you would deal with that, which is basically pulling your forces back, drawing out the supply lines, and then attacking. Zhukov found his work really compelling and persuasive, and he himself said that, I based my strategy on the writings of this guy, who did not have a very good end, Pete.
No?
No. Triandafilov did not have a good end because 1930s, Stalin's purges.
Of course.
He was caught up in that, and he was executed. And in the 1930s was no one knows this. There was another autonomous Greek state. So we know modern Greece as being comprised of Greece, and another Greek-speaking country is Cyprus after 1960. But in the 1930s, there was an autonomous Greek-speaking area in the Kuban region, just above the Caucasus in Russia, and that was the Greek Autonomous District, and that lasted for about 5-6 years.
Wow.
Where Greek was the official language, concentration of Greeks. They published Greek books officially with the new reformed alphabet. They had their own alphabet for Greek. They didn't want to have the Greek alphabet. See, in other parts of the Soviet Union, like Mariupol, Ukraine, these places, they had the Greek alphabet. Yeah. But there they tried a new alphabet. They got rid of all the excess e and I and o, so one letter for each sound, simplified alphabet. And Greek went through a bit of a cultural renaissance at the time.
Wow.
Until Stalin decided, no, we've given them too much tharos, we're going to deport them and kill them. And that's what happened. And that was called the Grecheskaya Operatsiya, where they just grabbed the people, put them on trucks, sent them to Kazakhstan. And few of the descendants of those people actually live here in Melbourne.
Really?
Yep. And and then they dissolved it just before the Second World War.
Gee, I had no idea about this
Absolutely.
Autonomous region at all. So Zhukov's origins
may have been Greek. But my question is this, based on what you're saying and how everyone says, well, they also say Yuri Andropov, the leader of the head of KGB and leader of the Soviet Union in the 80s, early 80s, that he may have been of Greek descent as well.
That makes more sense to me.
So what?
That's a good question.
So my question is, it's always interesting.
Yeah.
And because, we're Greek and they're Greek, and you find Greeks in the most ridiculous of places. There's a Prime Minister of Thailand who was Greek, Yanis Yerakis, and so on. But, So
It really I suppose what does really matter is if they themselves identify or had identified as Greek.
see, Heidi Klum is supposed to have some type of Greek blood in her.
Really. But
How does that help me, Pete?
well,
When I look at myself in the mirror, which I try and avoid doing this for obvious reasons, you can see what's going on here. Not much. The fact that all these people may or may not have been Greek, how does that affect me in my daily life in the way that I view my innate Greekness?
I suppose it's all got to do with the fact that it makes us feel a little better being Greek, that we've got these connections with some famous people, and if their genes have given them such greatness.
If Taylor Swift turned out to be Greek, so if Taylor Swift turned out to be Greek, maybe I'd have to review the way I feel about myself and my pride. But Zhukov, I don't know.
Interesting. We do have a fascination of ascribing.
Now
certain
you remember,
people
and
to,
it's
Greek
selective
origins.
because almost all of the sultans, or a very large number of
it's
sultans,
true.
had Greek mothers.
Yes.
But then again, the sultans are the arch villains, so they don't get included in the club. We don't feel proud about them.
Yeah, but I suppose it all.
Or
depends.
is it a racist argument? The only reason they argue that they achieved greatness was because they had Greek blood in them. And I've heard that. I've heard that being said. You know, say so-and-so is really good. Yeah, because it's got Greek blood in him.
Yeah. Agreed. There is that argument that many Greeks basically
Even attempts to prove that Kemal Atatürk had Greek blood in him to explain his success. Sometimes, though, and I'll give you this for an example, like Edi Rama, the president of Albania, he does have Greek blood in him. His mother is Greek. His mother comes from Himara in northern Epirus.
Wow.
The family of Koleka, which is everyone knows in Himara, the Koleka family. His uncle was a member of parliament and was advocating for Greek rights. And this guy is one of the most anti-Greek politicians in Albania who sprouts all sorts of racist nonsense, in my opinion, about the Greeks of the region, denying their ethnicity, saying that they're turncoat Albanians, all sorts of ridiculous things. And yet his mother is Greek.
But Dean, don't you find that the people who do have some sort of, call it ethnic blood from a perceived enemy, then go out of their way to double down to prove to the rest of the people that they are?
It's quite possible that they have to do that. I remember when reading about Erdogan, the great leader of the Başbakan of Turkey, talking about his Caucasian roots. Some people said that he was Armenian, and the way he used the word Armenian as if it was synonymous with filthy.
Yeah.
Like there's no way that I would have Armenian roots. You know,
Yeah.
the lady doth protest too much,
Yeah.
mes enfants. But whether he does or whether he doesn't, it stands to reason that all of us have some type of mixed blood, except for me, because I did a DNA test
Yeah.
at my wife's behest. My wife thinks I'm Mongolian. Small eyes, mes enfants. And no, I am 100% from where I'm supposed to be from.
Oh, really? And where's that?
The Outer Barcoo in Upper North Queensland. And it means nothing. It means nothing. Let's say that, for example, we're here and we only marry other Greeks with purebred DNA, and we stop speaking the Greek language after a couple of generations, but we still marry Greeks.
Yeah.
And our DNA, there's no such thing as ethnic DNA. I'll explode that theory. Remains pure, but we don't speak the language. We've got no connection to the culture or the place. So what?
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just futile. It just gives us fuel to waste a couple of minutes talking about it while the memory of your computer's been chewed up.
In 3 generations' time, if your descendants are eating meat pies and going to the footy and only doing that,
I take offence to that. What are you trying to say?
Are they actually Greek?
What are you trying to say? We invented meat pies. Kreatopita.
Oh, yes, of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
We also invented football.
Did we also invent other languages?
Did we invent other languages? That's an interesting question. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
Like it. I think we were having a discussion once about Phoenician.
Yeah.
And
I can't remember this discussion. Maybe you were having it with me, but I wasn't there.
Yeah, perhaps. Yes.
Well, Phoenician's interesting because to Phoenikizin
That's it. That's what
in
we were
ancient
discussing.
Greek.
Yeah.
So I can't remember who was it. Was it geographer Strabo who talked about to Phoenikizin being worse than to Lesviazin?
That's it.
So we all know what to lesbiazin means. It's a family show, mes enfants, so we're not going to go there. But to Phoenician was considered even worse than to lesbiazin. In other words, we were not the ones. I mean, we're accused of what's called Greek love. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Love is love, mes enfants. Everyone knows this since the referendum. But we deflected by saying that this is the preserve of the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians obviously were Aramaic or Semitic-speaking people who lived in modern-day Lebanon and Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably one of the first incidences of Orientalism, projecting the East as morally decadent. We don't do these things, the Phoenicians do.
Right.
And I'm sure the Phoenicians blame the Persians, who blame the Indians, who blame I don't know who. And it just goes
on
all
east.
the way back. Yeah. So, yeah, to Phoenicizin. And, of course, there's a big problem with the Phoenicians that we have. And the problem is this, Pete. According to the ancient Greek historians, we got our alphabet, our modern alphabet, from the Phoenicians.
Yes.
And they make a pretty compelling case because the Phoenicians, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Alpha, Vita, Gamma.
Yeah.
You know, they sound the same, they're the same shape. But a lot of Greeks can't accept this.
Why?
It is impossible that a lesser race or any race would have given us this civilizational
Especially
tool.
a decadent one, right?
Especially one por Phoenician. You know? So, no. Everything that has to do with our culture was created by us ab initio. Where it didn't exist, we brought it out. So this is the kind of story. But no. The whole idea of civilization is that people borrow, trends come. I mean, there's a great scholar whose name is West who wrote a book called The East Face of Helicon, and he's discovered sentences and whole passages in the ancient Assyrian Babylonian epics 2,000 years before the Homer, and motifs adopted wholesale in the Trojan epics.
Shh, you can't say that.
I
We
just
can't
did.
record this.
I just did. And now that they're translating and finding more of the Hittite archives, we didn't hit it off with the Hittites, they were just before us, in the center of Asia Minor, because that's the other thing. We were not the original inhabitants of Asia Minor. We colonized Asia Minor. There were other people there. Stamatesi. I'm talking to the boys and girls at home. Okay. And they've found the archives. There's constantly, I mean, archaeologists discover things all the time, and there's massive amounts of records there, and they're finding epics that describe the Trojan War. So these stories were common. We didn't invent these stories. They were circulating. What we did, of course, was put them in a different form, and then they were disseminated.
Yeah.
And they also talk about how Alexander was one of the major characters in this war of Willia. Willia, one of the names for Troy was Ilion. So Willia. Alexander, one of the names for Paris, who took Helen off to the Trojan War, was Alexandros. It was also known as Alexandros. So a lot of these things happening, Pete, because we don't live in a vacuum. We live in what's known as the cultural continuum, mes enfants. Yes.
And we've have we contributed or have we taken anything from Hebrew as well?
Have we taken anything from Hebrew? We've taken a lot of things from Semitic languages.
Right.
For example, the word aravonas, which means engagement, is an ancient Semitic word. You find it in Hebrew, you find it in Aramaic, arawon, which means promise.
Really?
Yeah. There are quite a few Semitic words in Greek because there's always been a interplay. And then you remember the fact that the Seleucids, who were the apogony of Alexander the Great, the general Seleucus, of course, when the empire of Alexander the Great was divided, he took Babylon, Syria, and they remained there for about 200, 300 years. So also when you consider the British Empire, about 200 years in duration, the epigoni, the ones that came after Alexander the Great, they ruled those lands for about the same period of time, which is enough to create great civilizational change. There was a constant interplay between Jewish civilization and the Greek civilization to the extent where a lot of Jews, especially in Alexandria, but also there were colonies within the Holy Land, stopped speaking Hebrew, were speaking Greek.
Really?
One of the reasons why the Old Testament was translated into Greek, the Septuagint translation, which we use in our church, is because they had stopped speaking stopped speaking Hebrew, and they needed to have a Bible in their own language, which was Greek. So, yeah, there's a constant interplay between these two people.
And you've done some research and found that, you said that we can learn something about Greek and how
Okay.
Greek was spoken
So,
from the Hebrew. From
ancient Hebrew stopped being spoken.
Yeah.
It became a dead language. It was only liturgical language, like Coptic is. The Coptic language, which is the language of the modern form of the language of ancient Egypt, stopped being spoken after the Arab invasion of Egypt. It is, to all intents and purposes, a dead language because it's only used within a liturgical context in the Coptic Church. It's not used for everyday speech.
Yeah.
So Hebrew was like that. They stopped speaking Hebrew. It was replaced by Aramaic. It was replaced by Greek. A lot of the Jews left after the destruction of the temple. They went to Europe. They went to Africa. They went all around the world. And they generally spoke the languages of the people that they came into contact with or the countries where they settled. And Hebrew was only used for their services, religious services. But then 1948 and the creation of Israel, which is now a very contentious topic given what's going on in the world, and a lot of people feel very strongly about that.
They do.
They decide, and even leading up to that, the Jews decide, well, A, we need a homeland because of our persecution and various bits and pieces, and also we need to revive Hebrew. So, yeah, I wrote an article about this a few months ago because there's a concern here in Melbourne. Sydney's not the same. In Sydney, everything works fine. But there is a concern, and Adelaide will... Where is Adelaide? Well, we don't have anyone who watches this show from Adelaide. Are there Greeks in Adelaide? I'm sure there are. You would know because you've been to
Three.
Adelaide.
It's about 3 people.
I used to go to Adelaide, but no.
You're missing out.
So there's a concern that we're losing the Greek language. And symptomatic of the fact is that we're doing this podcast about Greek things in English. Yeah?
True.
The language is being replaced by English and various forms of English. So is there a future from the Greek language? What can we do about the fact that latter-day generations are not learning the language? Is it doom and gloom? Do we throw up our hands in the air and say, well, look, we tried, it's too hard? Do we throw money at Greek school teachers? What is the way forward? So my argument is you can look at the Hebrew language revival story, where there was a committed group of people. It started off very small, a couple of scholars who said, look, here's this ancient language, and we spoke that 2,000 years ago, and life has moved on, civilization has moved on. We don't have the words anymore for a lot of these things that we're dealing with now. That's the same with Greek. In Australia, you know, my grandparents came here. They had never seen a fridge.
Yeah.
So I grew up not knowing what the Greek word for fridge is because that was not part of the linguistic heritage which I inherited.
Correct.
So friza, not psygio. There were no fridges in Greece when my grandparents came to Australia 70-odd years ago. Yeah. Similar, car, say caro in the old days.
Yeah.
All those things. Why? Because we didn't have that background. And if your language is imperfect and it doesn't give you the words that you need to describe things, you're not going to use it.
No.
And you're going to leave it. And you're going to replace it with a language that you can use because it's got all the tools there ready as a communication kit. So the Hebrew scholars who identified this said, okay, we're going to create a new language based on the old language and using the grammatical forms of the old language, and we're going to use that to coin new words for the words that we need that we don't already have, and we're going to create a new language. And the first guy who did it, whose name I can't remember, taught it to his kids.
Wow.
Yeah, which is important, it starts from home.
It does.
And then propagated this as a model. It took a long time for this to take off.
Yeah, it would.
First of all, there was a lot of opposition within the Jewish world about whether you should propagate this as a tool for reclaiming a country and making an official language, because there was a religious belief that you can't force this, and that if a return to Jerusalem and Israel will come, it will come from above, and you shouldn't be touching this. It's blasphemy to try and do it yourself. Yeah?
Interesting.
This was also, interestingly enough, there's me scratching my head on camera. You got to edit that bit out. But it's me thinking. It's evidence of me thinking. The communists were like this too. Marx talked about how the dictatorship of the proletariat would happen, and then the socialist state would take over, and then there would be communism. Never described how that would happen, but he said that would happen as a natural consequence. It was a historical trajectory. It was Lenin who then came and said, "No, you can't wait for this to happen. You have to force it along by having a revolutionary party."
Yeah.
Whereas the Mensheviks, who were the opposition to the Bolsheviks that Lenin belonged to, said, "No, you have to let things slide as they are and let nature take its course," the way Marx said. So there was a similar debate within the Jewish community worldwide about, do we force this or do we just allow it to happen whenever it happens? At the end of the day, after the Holocaust in 1948, a Jewish state was created and Hebrew was the language and successfully adopted as a language. And it is one of the only instances where a language that was dead has been successfully revived and is now spoken by millions of people. That has never happened before. There are languages that have been revived. Cornish is one of them, from the Cornwall.
Yep.
They spoke a Gaelic language which died out. And now I think there are 200 speakers of the language.
Right.
But it's as a second language. You know, they're English speakers who have learnt this language. But the only successful example of a language that was dead being adopted as a first language and successfully revived is Hebrew. It happened.
And Greek helped with...
No, the whole idea is Greek did not help in one. But I'm saying that if we're worried about losing the Greek language here,
Right.
that's a model for how we could revive the language. And the way that you revive it is by wanting to revive it, by making people believe that's important and getting them to study the language. I mean, yes, we're talking about a state and we're a linguistic and cultural minority within another state.
Yes.
Okay, and that's a very important difference. But this state, especially Victoria, is a rather benign state that actually allocates some type of funding
It does.
to certain schools in order to teach Greek. So we've got that there. We've also got structures. We've got a lot of Greek schools, you know, which teach language to varying success. Okay, I don't know how many of those kids finish functionally in Greek anymore. I don't know whether that takes place. And there are many reasons for that. We can talk about it another time. But here were people that had lost an entire language that successfully revived it. So I think we can learn from that when we sit there tearing our hair and saying, "Oh my God, we're all going to die, we're going to lose the language." Well, there are ways and means to revive it. If you have
hope
to.
for us yet.
I don't know if there's hope, but the truth is out there. You know, maybe we should learn. Maybe we should study these success stories. Maybe we can learn something from them. That's my argument in the column.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's good. Well, we're done.
yeah. Have we? That didn't hurt a bit,
Didn't it?
oh my God.
What do you think, Dane? You think there's something that we can actually continue doing? Wasn't too hard, was it?
Look, if you can get past the cringeworthy jokes, if you can get past the inane repartee,
Yeah.
then you soon discover that there's not really much substance in anything that we discuss,
Absolutely nothing.
and that the whole exercise has been futile and
Yeah,
pointless,
very futile.
and that truly the future is bleak for people that have got nothing better to do than watch this podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have been, mes enfants, if you stayed with us till this point, on TikTok, watching various cats gyrate to the latest hits by, I don't even know who's popular anymore because I'm old and I'm behind the times, but you could have done all of that. And instead you chose to sit here and, yeah. You know what I wonder? Every time I wonder, okay, so our podcasts are very lengthy.
They are.
And they will be punctuated by arbitrary advertisements, which
They
we
may
do
be,
not authorize unless you're on that pay thing, whatever. No, but I wonder what advertisements would be there punctuating and interrupting our ruminations, Pete.
Oh, we should create our own advertisement thing.
Yes. Can we do this? Can we do this? So
Yeah, we can do this. We can do this.
what would we promote? Give me a product that we would promote, and I'll try and do an ad now, impromptu.
I don't know. It would have to be Greek, wouldn't it? Like
Greek product.
Yeah, like a flavor of tzatziki, a new flavor of
No,
tzatziki.
I'm not doing anything to do with tzatziki.
Oh, come on, man. It lends itself to that. Just leave the Phoenicians out of it and you'll be fine.
So you picture, if you will, a judge,
Yeah.
okay, in, judges with their big wigs, a bench wig, their robes, very Australian-looking figure, red face, because after lunch they're always red-faced because they drink a lot of wine. I know this. Sitting there, opens up a tzatziki, yeah, and then he's sticking with a spoon and he's looking at it and going, this tzatziki. And then this Greek guy who looks suspiciously like George Kapiniaris comes up and goes, hey, you Zadz, don't Zadz my tzatziki. Something like that.
We'll get you a wig.
Thanks. Does the budget allow for that? Because they're quite expensive. A judge's wig costs about $2,500.
$2,500 to wear that piece of hair.
And not only that, but it's horsehair, and they got to actually take it off the horse and hand curl it. They do these things in the Philippines.
Gee, man.
Yeah, all of that. That's the colonial legacy. The colonial legacy is cruel to horses. Greeks don't do that. We don't wear wigs when we judge. Yeah,
but that's been totally phased down now, hasn't it?
No, on occasion they still wear the bench wigs in the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, they do, absolutely.
And I think the county court, they still do it there too, right?
Well, they can if they want to. Yeah,
but the magistrates it's out.
See, Greek organisation presidents.
And they should wear one.
No, not them, because they're not judges. They are servants of the people. But when you have the Eforeftiki Epitropi, which is when there are elections and then there's the scrutineers. Yes. Well, they're kind of like judges because they're judging the procedure. They should wear them. They would love it.
Oh, man. You'll be having people jumping.
And they can have tzatziki, This segment has been brought to you by tzatziki.
Of course.
At all participating supermarkets and down in Oakley, all those stores.
Always the standard. We try raising the bar of the quality of this thing, and towards the end it just descends into absolute debauchery.
And I thought that this was a stroke of genius, and look what you've done to it. I'm not advertising your tzatziki ever again, Pete. You just keep your tzatziki away from my face.
Well, the Phoenician judges keep on coming, don't they?
Phoenician.
All right, Dean, thanks again. Until next time.
As always, the pleasure has been moderate. And if there is a next time, I should be most surprised.
See you, mate.
Bye.